My name is Margaret. I'm 89 years old. Some mornings I wake up surprised that I'm still here. Other mornings, like this one, I wake up knowing exactly why I am. There's a sound that follows me now. Not a noise, really. More like the absence of one. Paper sliding across a table. A pen being placed just close enough to reach. Someone clearing their throat because they don't know what else to do. That was the day I signed the divorce papers without reading them. I remember the room better than I remember his face that morning. The room was too bright. The window had been left open, and the curtain moved every time a car passed outside. I remember thinking it was a strange detail to notice, considering what was ending. He didn't look angry. That part still surprises me. He looked tired, like someone who had already said everything, and was now waiting for the formalities to catch up. I asked him if it would take long. That was my question, not why, not when did this start, not is there something we didn't say yet, just whether it would take long. He said no, so I signed. At 89, people assume you understand regret. They think it arrives fully formed, like a lesson learned and neatly stored away. But regret doesn't work like that. It moves in slowly. It waits for silence. It grows when there's nothing left to distract you. Back then, I believed not reading those papers was a kind of mercy. I told myself I already knew what they said. I told myself the words wouldn't change the ending. What I didn't know was that one day, decades later, I would wish I had seen every word. Not to argue with it, not to undo it, just to know what he thought needed to be written down. We were married a long time, long enough that our lives tangled, together in ways neither of us knew how to explain to other people. Long enough that leaving felt more confusing than staying ever had. I used to think marriages ended with shouting or betrayal or something dramatic enough to justify the damage. Ours didn't. Ours ended with pauses, with unfinished sentences, with both of us pretending we were still listening when we weren't. I remember a Sunday afternoon, years before the papers. He was fixing something in the kitchen. I asked him a question. I don't even remember what it was now, and he didn't answer. Not because he didn't hear me. I could tell he did. He just stayed quiet. That was the first time I felt it. That distance doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just settles in and waits for you to notice. When the divorce came, people said the things people always say, that it was for the best, that we both deserve peace. I nodded. I thanked them. I didn't correct anyone. After he left, I kept the house exactly the same for years. His mug stayed in the back of the cupboard. His coat stayed in the hall closet, not because I expected him to come back, but because moving those things felt like reading something. I wasn't ready to understand. I never asked him why. Not on the day he handed me the papers. Not later. Not ever. There's a kind of waiting that becomes a habit. You don't even realize you're doing it. You tell yourself you'll ask tomorrow, or next time, or when things feel calmer. Then one day, there is no next time. At 89, time doesn't stretch the way it used to. It folds in on itself. Moments from 50 years ago show up uninvited, clearer than what I had for breakfast. And that day, the pen, the papers, the curtain moving in the window, it visits me often. I've tried, over the years, to remember what I was protecting myself from. Maybe I was afraid of seeing my own faults written down. Maybe I was afraid of realizing how long he had been unhappy without me noticing. There are nights when I imagine the words on those pages, not the legal language, the other things, the things that never make it into documents. I imagine sentences like, I didn't know how to reach you anymore, or I waited too long for you to ask, or I got tired of being quiet. But imagination is a poor substitute for knowing. After the divorce, life kept moving. That's what life does. I worked, I aged. People came and went. I learned how to be alone without calling it loneliness. Yet there was always that unopened door in my mind, that moment I walked past instead of through. I've lived a long time since then, long enough to understand that silence can feel polite while it's doing real damage, long enough to see that avoiding pain doesn't make you braver, it just makes the pain harder to place later. I don't blame myself the way I used to. Blame requires energy. What's left now is something quieter, a kind of sadness that doesn't ask to be fixed. If I had read those papers, I don't know if anything would have changed. We still would have gone our separate ways. The house still would have felt too big. His mug still would have gathered dust. But I might have carried less wondering with me all these years. Now, at this age, wondering is heavy. It doesn't leave much room for anything else. People ask me sometimes if I miss him. They usually ask it gently, like they're afraid the answer might break something that's already fragile. I never know what to say. Missing someone is supposed to feel clear, loud, obvious. What I feel isn't like that. It's quieter. It's more like realizing a room has been empty for so long that you stop remembering. When the furniture was moved out, what I miss most isn't him exactly. It's the woman I was, before I learned how easy it is to sign something and walk away from understanding it. I think about that day more now than I did back then. The way the pen felt heavier than it should have. The way my hand hesitated just long enough for me to notice, but not long enough to stop. I remember thinking that reading the papers would only stretch the pain. I thought I was being practical, kind even. At my age, you learn that kindness can sometimes look a lot like fear. I don't replay the moment with anger anymore. Anger burns too hot, and I don't have the strength for it now. What's left is softer than that. A tenderness for the younger version of me who didn't know that. Unanswered questions don't fade, they wait. There are nights when I imagine what it would have felt like to sit there a few minutes longer, to read every line, to see what had been decided without me really being present. Not to argue it, not to change it, just to witness it fully. I didn't realize that understanding is its own kind of closure. Now, nearing the end of my life, I notice how small moments carry the longest shadows. Not the fights, not the dramatic exits, but the quiet decisions made when you're tired and just want it to be over. That signature followed me longer than the marriage did. If you're still listening, thank you. Truly, I didn't record this to make a point. I just needed to say it somewhere out loud before time decides for me again.